Lin Qinghan was once called the King of Hell. All the mobsters worshipped him and obeyed his orders. After getting married, he joined a super rich family, but his wife's family hated him, mainly because they didn't know his true identity. Qinghan is faced with conflicts and believes he can resolve it, all for the happiness of his wife, who was also his true love since childhood. The story begins on a crowded street in Yangzhou City. Several fireworks are starting to light up in the sky. The streets are quite busy. It is full of famous guests who have lined up in front of the elite building. In front of the entrance of the building, there's a guard who lets people go through the list. A woman passing by asks what kind of event is happening on this day. Then a man reveals that today marks the 30th anniversary of a large organization, which is called the Lin Group. He also confirms that all the people who participate in this party are the most influential people in the city of Anjou. The security guards are out of patience and furious. They take people who look too much into the banquet hall. At this moment, a young man arrived on a motorcycle, right in front of the building. Apparently, he holds a piece of paper with an address in his hand. Checking the address over and over again, he realizes that he has arrived at the right address at the right time. This man is our protagonist, named Lin Qinghan. Suddenly, a large group of huge bandits appears behind the man, looking like a street mafia. One of them, apparently the leader of this gang, stares strongly at Lin. However, in the next second, he bows to the prota and calls him the master of somewhere. The leader takes a small glass and warns that this is the gift Lin Qinghan asked for. He also reveals that everyone had to scour all the antique stores in town to find him. After hearing the master word, Lin begins to roll up a sleeve. After that, he lands a punch in the leader's face, and angrily recalled that I repeatedly told him not to call him that, after such a strong blow. Everyone who was with the leader was frightened with horror. Then, the protagonist warns the leader that they should not drive such a luxurious car. And once again, he calls the guy's attention not to call him a master in public. At this point, all the vandals kneel down and apologize to Lin Qinghan. They promise that they have understood everything and obviously inform them that they will not do so in the future. Lin takes a handkerchief from his pocket and wipes his hand. On the way, the protagonist reveals that he doesn't want the Lin family to know his true identity. The Lin family has lived in Yangzhou for 30 years. They built the foundation of Changchun. His heirs are extraordinary, and their descendants are all dragons and phoenixes. Today there will be a banquet in honor of the birthday of the elderly Lady Jean Lin. The protagonist enters the banquet hall. In his hands he carries a gift box, which is a cup brought by the leader. A man at the entrance begins to announce the guest list and his gifts brought. The group's CEO Fen Hai wishes the elderly Lady Lin good luck, and sends a commemorative plaque encrusted with gold. The chairman of the board of Kyun wished the old lady long life, and sent some different jewelry made of precious stones and jade. And the chairman of the John Leather Society wishes the lady the same blessing as the East China Sea and the Sacred Sea in Nanshan. It is the turn to proclaim the name and gift of the protagonist. The host solemnly says the name of Lin Qinghan. But when he tells what gift he brought, everyone in the hall starts to turn around. The guests begin to whisper and laugh behind the man's back. They wonder if this is the same man who joined the Lin family a month ago. Some comment that they even heard that elderly Lin did not let him into the family home last month. The guests, as one, proclaim that the family is celebrating their 30th birthday and the birthday of elderly Lin. But his son-in-law, Lin Qinghan, sent a gift so absurd. Through this crowd, the protagonist's wife, named Lin King, is standing. The people next to her begin to whisper that a beauty as beautiful as Lin King, for such a nameless scavenger, is a real absurdity. In a very sad state of mind, the girl is close to the guests, and she blushes everywhere at every word they throw at her and her husband. Furious, she goes to Lin and asks why he didn't buy something decent with the money she gave him. However, the protagonist replies without any shame that this porcelain bowl was passed down in the early days of the King Dian dynasty. He also says that the cup is worth at least 60 million. The man reports this. Fortunately, he got it all for 100,000. Suddenly, one of the heirs of the Lin family, a man named Lin Xuan, steps out of the crowd of guests, and he tells the son-in-law of the family that there is a limit even to this nonsense. He proclaims that everyone can buy this trash for $20 at an antique store. Chuan Riley reports that he didn't think he was that stupid, that he couldn't even choose a right gift. He asks everyone to look at the gift he prepared for his grandmother. Two men enter the hall holding in their hands a huge jasper tree and a huge gap. Chuan presents his gift to his grandmother and wishes the Lin family eternal life. Such a gift leaves the old woman delighted and immediately thanks Lin Xuan for smoothing over the situation. And covering up a little the shame of King's stupid husband, the girl approaches her and promises that he will immediately prepare a suitable gift for her. But the grandmother does not want to listen to her granddaughter. She tells her that it is not necessary, and that even if they don't give her anything, it doesn't matter much to the Lin family. The lady takes Xuan's hand and they leave. The lady tells him to accompany her because her banquet will start very soon. As she leaves, she turns to Lin King and announces that the head table is already full, and that she and her husband do not need to join her. The woman gives a disdainful look and goes to accompany her grandson. The girl remains on the red carpet with her hands down. The guests around her begin to whisper that it's a shame that Lynn Dodger's daughter can't even sit at the head table. They start laughing and talking about her father only knowing how to drink in her life, and it's not surprising that her daughter married a mannequin. People don't really understand why the daughter of such a noble family married such a nameless guy as Qinghan. The girl begins to cry bitterly. Right in front of the entire hall, the protagonist sees the whole farce. He recalls that for him to join the Lin family, it was only to remain low-key, and that he was completely indifferent to what others thought of him. Lin actually thought that his wife didn't care about others either, but after seeing her crying, literally he came to the conclusion that this was not the case. It turns out that King really cares what her family thinks about her. At this moment at the banquet table, the old woman brusquely punches the table in fury. She proclaims that it's time to stop talking nonsense. She says that the Zhou group is developing rapidly, and that she has already surpassed the Lin group. She asks the younger children of the Lin family sitting across from her what they will do next and how. In this case, she will transfer this family into her hands. Chuan, who is sitting next to her, begins to calm the old woman. He says that today is the family's holiday and that she should not be angry because she is hurt. However, she seems to be even more angry. They exclaim that even if something happens to her, she will be fine. She asks Chuan if he thinks she will live a few more years, and repeatedly asks the juniors about which of them will take the first step forward to facilitate the new group's full operation. She says that if at least someone can do it, then she will reward them with anything. However, silence flies over the table. Chuan, at the moment, he thinks that the Zhou group is led by the ancestor of the second generation, and that he will not give them a single chance. He comes to the conclusion that this offer is not so attractive to his prospects. Then the elderly woman asks again if no one would dare to answer her question. A familiar voice comes out of the crowd. It was the protagonist, who at the same moment raised his upset wife's hand. He replies aloud to the lady that King is going to talk to the Zhou group about cooperation. However, the girl herself does not understand what her husband is saying. Lin Qinghan was once called the King of Hell. The entire underworld obeyed his orders. All the mobsters worshipped in front of him. He received loyalty, protection, and half of the world's wealth was also in his hands. However, the protagonist refused all the privileges of a gang. After that, he met his fiancée King, and for this reason, no one in the Lin family knows what Qing's true identity is and what was going on behind his back. Standing in the hall and holding his wife's hand, he never wanted to communicate or have any intimacy with the Lin family. However, he comes to the conclusion that he will not allow them to bully his wife. King looks at her husband and silently asks about what he just said. Qinghan replies quietly, if she succeeds, it is highly likely that she will receive the long-awaited approval from the Lin family and her grandmother. She believes that her husband is right in many ways. At the moment, she wonders if her grandmother considers her a useless granddaughter. She immediately decides that she will show and prove that she is no worse than the others. She lets go of her husband's hand and walks with her head held high to the banquet table where her grandmother is sitting. Lowering herself a little, she asks Miss Lin to give her permission to discuss cooperation with the Zhou group. Chuan, who is sitting next to her, immediately makes a dismissive expression and asks King about what makes her think she deserves to negotiate. Chuan proclaims that he will be embarrassed if he is. However, he warns her that it is not that he belittles her, but what she can do to successfully negotiate with the company's CEO. He asks if she really knows how to manage the company. From King's perspective, she can climb the career ladder and at the same time earn the respect of the Lin family. The girl lowers her head again and becomes discouraged. However, his grandmother replies that she is ready to hand over the task to King. Surprised by such a statement, Lin Chuan immediately gets up from the table and loudly proclaims that this is the wrong choice. Lin Chuan exclaims that it is not that he has no chance of successful negotiations, but he says that they must use this to their advantage. The man jealously informs them that they cannot allow King to do so, because even today she insulted the Lin family with her trick. At this moment, you think for a moment. As soon as she opens her mouth, the protagonist immediately interrupts her. He proclaims that if King cannot successfully follow up on the negotiations, then he will give up the opportunity to inherit the Lin family estate. Right now, Lin Chuan is angry at the Qinghan's antics. He immediately thinks that this is his chance to get closer to the Lin family heritage. He then asks King if she agrees with what her husband just said. Lin Chuan proclaims that if his negotiations fail, she and her husband will not have the right to the family property. The protagonist has no problem asking his wife to agree to such conditions. However, King nervously asks the prota not to talk nonsense at such a serious moment. The old woman warns that once her husband has agreed to such conditions, she gives him advice to do everything possible for the negotiations to be successful. However, she asks not to blame her for not caring about her feelings if it doesn't work out. At this moment, the protagonist completely loses his temper and approaches the lady with very serious intentions. King holds his hand and asks him to stop. Looking into her eyes, he launches a sentence sharp. Let's wait and see. Then, holding King's hand, they leave the banquet hall. Looking at these people in the audience begin to exclaim that King is in a very pitiful state because this man, Her husband is really the greatest failure of her life. They say that he is useless, and that even if they come to beg for the inheritance, they will have no pity. The guests burst into laughter and are shocked by a son-in-law as stupid as the protagonist. The crowd believes that they should at least move their brains a little. Since the cooperation with the Jew group is a very important event, everyone starts laughing. But Grandma Lin sighs a lot and really reaches her limit. After a while, an old-looking man enters the banquet hall. He goes straight to the old woman and proclaims that he is still as energetic as he remembers her. It turns out to be his longtime brother named Gulai. They greet each one politely. And then Miss Lin asks him about what led him to her, but before she can speak fully, she immediately hears admiring and shocked exclamations to Gulai. She questions what happened to her face. Gulai immediately approaches the glass given by the protagonist and ridiculed by society. He asks the old woman if this is not magnificent. Without being indignant, old Lin replies that perhaps her brother was wrong in saying this about the glass, because it is only a gift from a violent boy who, in her opinion, is not able to distinguish even the good or the bad. However, Gulai immediately responds to her that what she just said is complete nonsense and nonsense. He asks the lady if she doubts his many years of experience in the field of antiques. Having made a displeased face and studied the small bowl a little with his eyes, he takes it in his hands after a few minutes. He informs her that this gift is a real treasure compared to the others. The next day, the protagonist calmly walked through the products in the local market. He was looking at local carrots and was going to buy them at a discount. When his secretary approached him by car, he immediately got off, and he warned that Miss Anna, the imperial princess of the Old Kingdom, hopes to find him. He also informs him that his plans include stopping what he was doing, but not taking this meeting request seriously. He tells him that he is already married. However, he offers the secretary to see how far he can go. The Prota also says that his wife goes to the Jew group to discuss cooperation and asks him to send someone to solve this matter. As a sign of respect, the secretary replies that he will prepare everything for his departure. King Han also warns the secretary that they should not meet openly like this. He says that all of this will be done for security purposes and that he wants to keep his secret in front of the Lin family. At this moment, King Han puts on a motorcycle helmet and is about to leave. When his secretary stopped him, he says that it is unnecessary for him to do all this for his wife. However, the protagonist replies that he will not understand this. But King is the whole world to him. The secretary freezes in place, not understanding what to answer such a question. The Prota takes a motorcycle and leaves the market under the summer wind. When he leaves, he thinks that there is nothing in the world that he has not done for his wife. This also has its own significance because before that, Ching Kan was on the street with his mother at the age of 5. So she helped him, and his mother survived the harsh winter. King also brought warm clothes. In winter, at the age of 7, King saved the protagonist for free when he ate a poisoned food. At the age of 10, the girl helped him with money for his treatment. King Han at the age of 10 went to the Lin family charity school and his mother got a job there as a cleaner. For a while, after a difficult life, he went in a good direction. But when the protagonist turned 14, his mother was diagnosed with a malignant tumor. Towards not to be an extra burden for Ching Han, his mother jumped from the roof of a tall building. During these years, the protagonist was left alone in poverty. His mother left a letter. She asked him to take care of the Lin family. Back in current times, the protagonist begins to prepare a special soup intended for King. Recently, he discovered that someone had given his wife a strange potion. King Kan comes to the conclusion that all he can do to save her is to add medicine to her soup every day. He adds a special medicine to the soup and finishes cooking. After pouring her onto the plates, he goes straight to the girl. He knocks on the door and informs King that his soup is cooked. At this moment, she leaves the room with a tired look, holding a huge workbook in her hands. A little staggering and almost falling, she passes by Ching Han. He immediately turns to her and holds her hand so he doesn't fall. King Han suggests a brief rest because she didn't sleep all night. He thinks his wife needs a little break before an important meeting. However, the girl quickly takes her hand out of the Prota's hand and tells her that she is fine. She asks him not to worry about her though. King Han tells her that walking in such a state, let alone going to work, is an extremely unsafe occupation, but he still sees that his wife is determined and she will not stay to rest. Then he asks her to drink at least the soup he prepared. He also says that he will give you a ride, so that she can make her appointment on time. This time, the woman agrees and starts drinking soup. After drinking it, she immediately notices that it has become much better and easier for her to walk. After that, she asks Ching Han to get ready as soon as possible so that she can go to Zhou's company faster. Seeing his wife's relief, the protagonist immediately gets excited and goes to get ready. Already ready, they go together by bike to the Zhou group. Arriving there, the Prota informs King that he has arrived. However, the first time she doesn't hear him because on the way she accidentally falls asleep on his shoulder. Seeing that she is sleeping sweetly, the protagonist thinks that King worked hard all night for the success of these negotiations. He also finds that all her bravery disappears when she falls asleep so sweetly on his shoulders. When the woman feels someone's gaze, she immediately wakes up and jumps off the bike. She blushes a little and starts to be embarrassed by the fact that she just fell asleep on his shoulder. King in a serious tone asks the prota to wait for her in the same place. He happily agrees to wait for her. Accompanying her with a look, he thinks that success is guaranteed for the girl, as he is sure that he has prepared everything for this procedure of good humor and high spirits. They separate in front of the building. However, half an hour later, the protagonist sees her leaving the building. He also sees that she is crying bitterly. At this moment, he runs to her and asks about what happened. This time, the enraged girl throws all the documents in his face and says that it's all his fault, and that it all went down the drain because he made such a ridiculous promise to old Lin. She proclaims that they were not wrong about their hunches. The leaves of the documents, like autumn leaves, begin to fall and spread around. King Han freezes on the spot and doesn't understand what happened in that place that hurt his wife so much. She quickly gets into the nearest taxi and immediately leaves the Zhou company. The protagonist is still in the same place. It remains to be guessed what happened in this, and who dared to spoil his wife's mood so much. He remembers that he seemed to have prepared everything in advance so that her date would go well. He immediately calls his secretary and asks him to find out who made his wife so unhappy. The man immediately asks to find out everything. The secretary immediately logs into his computer and discovers that Zhou, the CEO of the Zhou company, was intimidating the girl with the negotiation situation. According to him, he told her to go to the motel alone and spend the night with him. He says all this, and the man even breaks his phone out of anger. Enraged by the lines of the director of the Zhou companies, he wonders how he dared to say such a thing to his precious wife, with the intention of breaking it. The protagonist makes it clear that he must better prepare the coffin because it may very soon be useful. At this moment, Zhou, CEO of the Zhou group, is sitting in the tower of the building, calmly sipping his coffee. Sitting alone, he proclaims that Lin King has no choice but to spend the night with him, because this is a billionaire project that King cannot afford to miss. Zhou thinks that King will soon come running to himself to beg for a contract, and while he's sitting alone, he decides to do something else. Sitting at the computer, he is about to see some obscene material. When someone breaks down the door, he gets so scared that he spills his hot coffee toward his crotch. He immediately screams, furious, angry. He looks at the door and with a face red with anger, asks the name of who dared to enter his office so rudely. And it turns out to be Lin Qinghan. Upon entering, he introduces himself as the one who will destroy the Zhou group right now. In the same second, the protagonist runs around the table, grabs Zhou by the head and hits him right on the table. He takes out the cup of coffee and the computer that is next to him. Everything on the table goes to the floor. Zhou flies straight to the wall of his office, his head hits the wall, and begins to descend red liquid. Surprised by such impudence, Zhou puts his hand on his forehead so as not to lose even more liquid. The enraged director asks if the protagonist knows who is in front of him, because he intends to show that he is dangerous. Touch it. However, the well-informed Qinghan taunts the director and asks him what he is talking about so quietly. He proclaims that he cannot hear because of the noise and bangs on the table with his fists. The table breaks. Zhou clearly realizes that the guy in front of him is very strong, and if he keeps getting beaten, there will be no place left to live. Perceiving the situation in his position, he decides to surrender to Qinghan and quickly sits down on his knees. Further on, in the same shameful pose, he begs, asking him what he needs, making the world the scariest in the world. Qinghan proclaims that you have only two options. While waiting for his decision, he suggests that he sign a contract with King, or he will be destroyed in the same place with his company. Zhou does not take the protagonist's threat very seriously, and proclaims that he may have been sent by the Lin family. After finally getting up, he tells the protagonist that he would be fine if he was base, deciding that he was bribed by the Lin family. Zhou asks if he is sure that the money given to him for his murder by the Lin family is really worth his life. The protagonist warns that with the second result of the events, not only will he be destroyed, but his Zhou group will also fail again, not taking his words seriously. The director bursts into laughter and says that Qinghan's fists are quite strong, but not to the point that he can destroy an entire company without listening to his words until the end. The protagonist picks up the phone and calls someone. He points his finger at Zhou, who sits down and is silent. He picks up the phone and announces to the person behind him that if he doesn't call back within 50 seconds, he is instructed to level the Zhou corporation to the ground. Then he says he's hanging up. Thus begins the 50-second report. At first, Zhou shows strong resistance and says that the prota is just showing off in front of him. The director kicks his chair where he used to sit and exclaims that he's just trying to make a big picture of himself. They spend 20 seconds in their resistances, and still resisted, he threatens the prota that if he waits a little, he will destroy it with his bare hands. There are only 5 seconds left for your final answer, so your time is running out. He looks at Qinghan with a fierce gaze. Zhou tells him that now he really wants to see him destroy his corporation. Seeing that nothing is happening, he ironically asks what happened to his threats. Suddenly, his phone rings. Zhou goes to the phone and receives bad news. It turns out that the shares of the companies of the Zhou group were suppressed by a mysterious consortium. The team reports that the company is losing hundreds of millions every second. This news makes Zhou sweat a lot. On his face, you can see the worsening. The The director is informed that 3 of the partners want to stop cooperating, in addition to the company's losses. The servers were attacked by a stream of hackers. The Zhou Group team reports that they were helpless. In the other call, there are some calls from the managers of the Zhou Group company. He picks up another phone and the frantic crying of his disgruntled father enters his ears. He screams in his son's ears and starts talking about him being a useless stupid. His father also informs him that several of his acquaintances advise him to flee the country. Simply, Zhou crossed the road to someone he shouldn't, and now the company is slowly sinking, which naturally terrifies the CEO. Then he realizes that this is the work of King Han. He points his finger at the protagonist and proclaims that he is to blame for everything. Smiling mischievously, King Han exclaims that he has given him 2 options to choose from, which led him to such consequences. He asks her repeatedly what kind of answer he'll give her this time. Hopeless Zhou quickly agrees to his terms. Falling to his knees, he exclaims that he is ready to do anything for him, as long as he leaves his company alive. Then the prota says again that he wants Zhu to meet with Lin King tomorrow, to apologize and also give a considerable amount of compensation for such conditions. The director clearly didn't want to do that, but out of hopelessness he agrees. A day later, a Lin family reunion takes place in the Yangju Center, where once again Lin Chuan starts yelling at King. He claims that they know about the Zhou Group's refusal. Just as he starts yelling at her and accusing her of failing with the contract, the main door of her office opens and the crowd of men in suits enters. They end up being the main people in the Zhou company. This understanding is growing on all sides by the second. The silence is interrupted by a very angry Lin Chuan, who immediately asks why they came. Zhu's father also arrived with him, and he was clearly not in a very good mood, so much so that in the next second, he immediately hit his son in front of everyone. Zhu did not come out unscathed. He hadn't even recovered from the injuries King Han had left behind after that interesting encounter. A very angry father begins to beat his son and orders him to immediately kneel and begs King for forgiveness. He calls him a nasty animal. Writhing convulsively, Zhu Yu kneels down and holds the contract in tears. He says that he is sincerely sorry for having treated her in such a situation stupidly, and that he himself is just another fool. It also says that, after the official signing of the contract, the land contained in this document will be completely at your disposal. Man says that he does not need this land, and that he only hopes that in the future his companies will cooperate with each other. Zhu begs King for forgiveness. Silently lowering his head, he exclaims that if she doesn't forgive him, then this man, or rather his angry father who is after him, will destroy him. Zhu is literally begging her to sign the contract. All the members of the Lin family present in that office don't understand how and why Zhu made this shameful appearance. The girl immediately realizes that he was clearly pushed into this by someone. She starts thinking about this mysterious person, however, without drawing any conclusions from it. She decides that first she will just sign one, and then she will find the right person. She takes the contract and announces that she accepts the apology. Still kneeling, the man immediately. He thanks the girl. Then Zhu's father apologizes to King for wasting time with them, and also exclaims that they won't bother you anymore. After seeing all this, Mrs. Lin asks Chuan about who could be the one who is apologizing to King in this way. In the next second, she bursts into laughter and suggests that perhaps King has an ace up his sleeve, which they don't know about. The old lady announces that the Lin group will be sponsored, and that King has successfully negotiated. She goes to her granddaughter and puts her hands on his shoulder. She happily exclaims that she has actually kept her promise. The elderly woman praises her granddaughter for her successful work. She also warns that if you need help, you can turn to her. Very happy, the girl thanks grandmother. After the meeting, the old woman and Chuan leave the building together. Immediately, the man says that King Han may have taken something against the Zhu family for King's well-being. He also says that Zhen Chu has had feelings for the girl for many years and that the Chun family itself loves her. Chuan exclaims that perhaps his family should have realized this. However, the elderly woman abandons him immediately. She says that King already has a husband. Chuan says everything is simple. The man informs the elderly woman that King is enough to divorce the protagonist. The next day, King goes to a fancy restaurant and is not alone. It is also an important fact that it was not her own husband who called her, even though she was married. He suggested that she go on a blind date. She found this proposal very strange, but agreed. Anyway, the protagonist went along with her. He waits for her in front of the restaurant. Approaching her husband, she takes his hand and looks at him embarrassed. At this moment, King remembers that she knows Chen Chu's character very well, and that her husband is much better than him in every way. Seeing her embarrassed face and deciding that she has become softer with him, the protagonist begins to bring his hands to her hips. Embarrassed, the girl blushes all and tells him to take his hands off. She warns them that when they enter, they should not talk nonsense and that they need to be kinder to each other. The girl says that she was just rehearsing intimacy with him and nothing else. The protagonist is also embarrassed by these words and immediately removes his hands. He jokes and says that he will complete his task in front of Chun's family. They enter the restaurant and sit at the main table where the Chun family and King's father are present. The prota and the girl greet Lin's father, but he doesn't even look at them. However, he reports that King and Zhou are about the same age. The girl begins to understand what is happening, but he still doesn't pay attention to it. The son of the Chun family named Zhou begins his speech. He asks King a question if this person, pointing to Qing Han, is his partner. He also says that she doesn't really know what's good for her, and the Chun family's mother whispers in her father's ear, which Prota doesn't inspire confidence, and that her son is also 100 times better than him. Seeing this pressure, the girl makes it clear that this is her true choice, and that she is not interested in someone else. The protagonist doesn't seem to be touched by the words of others, and he's sitting next to his wife with a sarcastic smile. King's father calls the waiter, and so as not to open a dispute between the families, he asks for something to eat. The waiter comes and distributes the menu. In order to disgrace the protagonist, Zhou takes the menu and gives it to him, and tells him that he can order whatever he wants and that he will definitely pay the bill. However, about his apparently good intentions, a plan is hiding. Zhou comes to the conclusion in her mind that the protagonist does not know foreign languages, and the menu that was brought to him was in French. He is already anticipating King Han's misfortune with a sly smile. However, the protagonist calmly takes the menu and says he wants a liver and red wine baguette. Upon hearing this, Zhou immediately bursts into laughter, and he says that this dish is called foie gras. He suggests to the man not to pretend he knows French cuisine. The young man also exclaims that French cuisine has a very reverent for etiquette and customs. Zhou offers to see what kind of healthy food he ordered for himself. After bringing the dishes, the Prota chose fruit. The man says that according to the etiquette of French cuisine, it is impossible to order before the main course, and that in France, someone like him does not respect French etiquette. He would be immediately kicked out of the restaurant. The protagonist shows no emotion about the teasing and falls silent with a serene smile. However, King can't stand such mean statements to her husband, so raising her voice, she proclaims that Zhou shouldn't talk so much. Hearing this, the Prota decides to join the conversation. He reports that first foie gras is actually duck liver, made in the French style and which is also called fatty liver, and secondly, apricot, which is fruit in this situation, goes as a snack. King Han also informs him that it should be eaten on a baguette. Upon hearing this, Zhou points to a baguette with fatty liver and proclaims that such a meal is unacceptable. And even though he is stupid and poor, his imagination is excellent. However, not everyone took his words seriously. The protagonist points his finger at the next table, where the same dish is eaten in the same way as Qing Han said earlier. Seeing Zhou's disgraced face, King Han asks with a smile about who turned out to be a stupid. The man was all red at what he saw. Zhou looks dumbfounded at the next table, simultaneously realizing that it wasn't Qing Han who dishonored himself. King Han, with a serene smile, he says that the true subtleties of French cuisine are not just a combination of ingredients, he says. It's not just food and snacks at someone's suggestion. After making a small sandwich, he holds a piece in King's mouth and asks him to try it. She does not refuse. In the next second, she realizes that the flavor of the sandwich is simply divine. She tells him that the sandwich came out very tasty from her look. It is clear that she has now fallen in love with King Han, and even more, seeing the chemistry between them. Zhou furiously comes to the conclusion that he really knows French gastronomy and culture. Of course, this infuriates him. Zhou, biting herself in hatred, informs her that what he said before is true. However, according to him, people who blindly follow the rules without their full understanding are hypocrites. The Chun family, unable to endure all this parade of shame and humiliation. He gets up and walks away at once, and the protagonist still looks at them with the same serene smile. King's father is also leaving. She and Qing Han remain alone and both burst into laughter. She asks if he did it on purpose. He replies to her that it was a wonderful performance. King asks where he learned this and says that she doesn't remember him talking about it in front of her. He replies that he didn't learn it on purpose, but he remembered this information when he worked as a waiter in a restaurant. Then King asks him why he doesn't work for her company. She exclaims that her talent would suit him well and could build a public relationship with her company. However, the protagonist immediately refuses this offer and says that his only duty is to be a faithful husband and stay at home. In his thoughts, he thinks it's better for him to stay home and cook soup than to go to work. He also understands that if you need money, he will succeed just by making a call. He can't convince his wife that his decision is correct, and she starts throwing a tantrum. King says that, him being a grown man can't find a job for himself. Sitting at home, he won't achieve anything in life. The man asks her not to be angry, so he ends up agreeing to the deal. The next day, he joins the company with a salary of $2,000 a month. When he is sitting and having a coffee next to work in the morning, a red-haired girl suddenly arrives. She immediately approaching him, asks if he is the beggar. The protagonist, a little surprised by such daring, he slowly raises his eyes to the girl. Also, she says that it is clear by looking at it to determine this. She exclaims that he is not worthy of King. She turns out to be a friend of the girl, whose name is Fangi. She proclaims that after seeing him, she has lost her appetite to eat anything. Unable to stand him, the man gets up from the table and warns that she doesn't care about his words as long as he is King's boyfriend. Deciding not to continue this meaningless dialogue, the man begins to leave. However, the girl screams after him and warns him, telling him not to be deceived that he is not King's husband. She says that if he doesn't understand, she will repeat his words again and kick him out of here. She also tells him that King is already losing his reputation for being close to him. After enduring this, the protagonist stops, and with a fierce look, tells her not to insult him or his wife. He starts to get closer and closer to her. The girl starts to get scared. A company manager named Kang immediately approaches and asks the prota about what he is doing here. The man grabs him by the shoulders and immediately throws him outside. He asks the girl if she is okay, and that if Ching-han dared to touch her, he would immediately throw him out of here. The girl says that if he's new to the team, they're required to teach him how to communicate with customers. The disgruntled girl leaves accompanied by the manager, who will immediately know who this man in front of him is. Could it be that this is the useless son-in-law who recently joined the Lin family? He tells the girl not to worry and that he will definitely take care of him. Jiang Kang's face wrinkles at such words. Immediately after his departure, Kang meets the protagonist with a task. The man says he doesn't like spendthrifts in the company, so he'll give him a day to catch them. He gives it a notebook and then sends it away for Shan. However, King Han first asks him about where he can get the address and free company rides, which should be provided for such rides. Kang immediately yells at him, saying that the protagonist is asking for such an outrageous offer on the first day, and that he has become extremely arrogant at this time. King Shan immediately sits down at the table in front of him and informs the man that in this case he won't be going anywhere. Kang is furious and asks if the man will definitely not go to Shan, so the prota asks him to leave him alone and he goes to his phone, which further annoys his boss. Alone on his smartphone, he dials the number of his secretary and informs him that he is currently in the company of his wife. He also tells the secretary over the phone that he needs to immediately send people to Shan, so that the company's money can be returned. Of course, Kang hears this call and immediately asks who he thinks he is, that he can just send people to Shan. Then the protagonist in response asks if he is in a hurry. The man offers the manager to sit and wait a while. The manager finally loses his temper and shouts loud and clear that he will lose face if the money doesn't come. Kang calls Ching Han an idiot, and warns that if it was so easy to get them to bring money, they would have already managed to do it themselves, with their loud screams. He gathers a crowd around him who begin to admire his disagreement. A security guard at the company approaches the manager and says that Ching Han is the idiot of one of the most influential families, with which it is not worth spoiling relations. The protagonist starts the reverse report, starting at 3, and when he finishes his people enter the door. At first glance, these people look like typical mobsters. They scare the crowd and the manager standing in front of the prota. The crowd and the manager are shocked by such an unexpected appearance. Kang and others seeing these formidable people immediately begin to apologize in order to avoid the gangman. Pushing his glasses away, the man asks where King Han is. Then he points to he with his finger where he is sitting serenely. When he points at the man, Kang anticipates that now Ching Han will get what he deserves, and that Shan's guys came here to deal with him once and for all. He thinks he's going to look at the shame of the Lin family and is already cracking a sly smile. The man immediately approaches the protagonist and asks aloud if he ordered them to provide Shan's money, sitting in the same serene pose. King Han answers in the affirmative, and furthermore asks him if the man has any problem with this. The mafia man immediately calls all his friends to him and informs them that the man sitting in front of them is the same Ching Han. Kang immediately gives a sly smile and comes to the conclusion that now Ching Han will get what he deserves. However, it was not there. The gang immediately screams and apologizes to the protagonist. 30 people immediately kneel down and ask him for forgiveness. They scream that they just want to live. Kang's jaw drops after hearing this. He doesn't understand what's going on here. The gang leader, with tears in his eyes, hands over a check and informs him that there are 100 million there. He even asks him to count every coin. King Han takes the receipt and immediately hands it to Kang. He proclaims that his work today is over. Taking the check in his hands, Kang sees that he not only returned the money, but forced them to return it in double size. The seemingly kneeling gang leader sweetly asks the protagonist if he could let them go. King Han answers in the affirmative and informs him that he is free. Upon hearing this, they immediately run out of the cafe. The crowd also leaves them behind. Kang stands in the middle of the hall and thinks this guy has dyed his nose on his first day on the job. Of course, this makes him furious and comes to the conclusion that he will not let him work here again. One of the employees gives an order to the crowd so that no one in this place can talk about what happened today. He announces that he will personally close Shan's account. Meanwhile, the prota arrives at the office and sits in his seat with a bored look. He is waiting for the end of his shift when he is suddenly fired and sent home. He's not upset about it, but with a bored look he rolls his eyes. They give him a commission for his work today. He is offered to take them away. The protagonist proclaims that he is not worried about the job and says that he is more interested in how they will explain his dismissal to his boss. The employee replies that the boss himself can't stand him and that therefore nothing will happen if he secretly gets rid of him. King Hin gathers his things and begins to leave. When he leaves, he thinks that even though it's a small company, there's not a single trusted person here. At night, he leaves the company and is going home when a car passes him. Out of the corner of his eye, he notices the same friend of his wife who was rude to him in the morning. After some thought, he realizes that her appearance was extremely sickly and the person next to her did not inspire confidence. He comes to the conclusion that she is a person close to King, and that therefore he will not be able to let anything bad happen to her. He thinks his wife will be very upset if he lets this happen. So therefore he runs after the car at the speed of light, simultaneously knocking down the people who were passing by. The man arrives at the house and was already next to Fangi. He puts her to bed and asks his friend if everything is ready to be filmed. Your friend replies that this is the best camera that is usually fashionable to find in stores. He assures that the filming will be good. It is clear from the girl's face and behavior that she was given a strong medicine that dulled all her feelings. The kidnapper's name is Chen Jung. He warns that he can't wait any longer. Then he begins to undress, and the employee behind the cameras begins to blush from the process he is going to contemplate. However, the foot of the protagonist flies in his face. In the next second, the blow hits the head, and he flies to the ground. Seeing a formidable face, Chen asks King Han to spare him. He tries to justify himself by saying that they are making a deal with the girl. Without listening to him, until the end, the protagonist immediately hits him in the neck and calls him a dirty brat. When he finally deals with the two, he takes off his jacket and covers the girl. With it, he takes a handkerchief out of his pocket and wipes the sweat of the unconscious girl with it. When he holds out his hand, she suddenly hugs him. The girl says that it is hot and that she is waiting for King Han's help. He blushes and falls into astonishment and does not understand how to proceed. After thinking for a while, he immediately pushes her face away from his. He stands up and proclaims that he doesn't even know where she lives. He comes to the conclusion that, in this case, he will only take her to King's house. 20 minutes later, they meet at the Lin family home. Finally, he managed to drag her out the window because there were a lot of people downstairs who would definitely make noise because of his wife's friend. He decides that he must immediately find an opportunity to tell and inform King about it. Opening Fangji's eyes, wonders where she is. Meanwhile, in the lower part of the villa, there is a heated discussion about King's personal life. The entire Lin family gathers and discusses her position and her husband's position. His aunt proclaims that there is nothing to discuss and that King just needs to divorce the protagonist and remarry Jen Chun. After hearing this, the girl asks her how she can say such a thing. She says that King Han is not the same as before, and that now he is motivated and ready to work. Lin Chuan, who is sitting next to her, bursts into laughter and asks King if his standards are really so low that his choice fell on a fool like her. He also says that he may one day want to work with beggars and beg. At this point, his aunt tells him that it was very rude of him. However, in the end, she adds that her words actually make sense. King at this point thinks that her husband would never have done such a thing. Her family sees when the girl starts to get angry at her family, but at this point their heated argument is interrupted by the elderly Lin. She gets bored watching the whole show that her family is, and she asks King to tell her the truth. The old woman tells her that this is a very good opportunity for her family to build good connections on this. She reports that it is beneficial not only for them. Finally, she asks if King loves the protagonist. She seems to think for a while, and when she starts to answer, everyone hears her friend's voice. Interrupting his speech on the stairs comes the screams of a girl who calls King on a monster. The whole family immediately turned away at the screams that came from above. Fangi comes out of the stairs in a torn red dress and asks how King Han could have done it. In tears, she immediately runs to King. The protagonist himself is horrified by the uproar she made downstairs. He runs off. Shortly after, King immediately asks Fangi about what happened to her, still choking on tears. The girl reports that today she fainted in the garage and that, when she woke up, she saw the protagonist hanging right on top of her. The protagonist also appears in full view of the family and everyone. Of course, he immediately understands what is happening. Then, the old woman asks Fangi if she is telling the truth. The girl replies that she has nothing to lie about such serious matters. King immediately becomes enraged and at the same time hits King Han in the face. She calls the guy an animal, distressed by this. The protagonist sadly asks his wife if she doesn't believe him. Chuan seizes the moment and exclaims that King Han is embarrassing his Lin family. He swings and proclaims that this time he will finally destroy it. However, this time the protagonist is not offended and immediately hits Lin Chuan, and it flies to the ground. He screams and asks the prota about how he dared to throw him to the ground. At this moment, the elderly Lin vents and orders King Han to be taken out of here. Finally, the protagonist looks at King and thinks that even after so many years, there is not even a drop of trust in her eyes for him. When he realizes this, he decides to walk away, and along the way, tells King that if she doesn't believe him, what's the point of staying in such a family? Distressed by the incident, he begins to slowly leave the lower hall of the Lin family's villa. King looks at him with sad eyes. Rising from his seat, Lin Chuan yells behind the man, saying that it serves him. He exclaims that he always knew he wasn't a good guy. He proclaims that his Lin family raised him, and he asks how he could do such shameful things. King goes to his friend to console her. She hugs Fanny and exclaims that she will find who really did it. She asks her not to worry. She informs him that if it is true, then she will divorce him immediately. Then, Fanny starts screaming towards her friend, asking if she just saw what happened right in front of her. She also asks if she doesn't believe her own friend. She exclaims that even in such a situation she is protecting her husband. King freezes on the spot, not understanding what she has to say to calm her friend down at this moment. The confusion is interrupted by a man who ran into the house. He searches for King with his eyes and finally finds her. It turns out to be an employee, a man named Zhou. Worried, the girls immediately ask the man the reason for his appearance. He informs her and Fanny that he has received the camera from Miss King's husband. Later at Lin's villa, Fancy asks to see what was portrayed on the camera that the protagonist gave him. He proclaims that she was found in Chen village. After opening the film from the camera, they see that the owner of the house, with a sly smile, asks the clerk to record them clearly and explicitly. Chen also talked about how he needed to see all the details of the footage clearly. Seeing all this, King and Fanny are horrified. After that, a man appears in the video. That is the protagonist. Despite his pleas and beats up Shen, the camera clearly shows that it was King Han who won the fight. It is clear that the protagonist took off his jacket and put it on Fanny. He dragged her to safety. Upon seeing this footage, King almost breaks his heart out of a sense of his own stupidity. She immediately regrets not having listened to the protagonist, and tears begin to form on her cheeks. She immediately gets up from her seat and, without looking back, runs straight for the door. Along the way, she thinks she didn't even bother to ask the King Han himself about what happened. At that moment, shedding tears, she runs to the exit. After leaving the village, she sees that the prota is right in front of her. She immediately calls him. He turns around and sees his wife. She explains that she now knows the whole truth about that unpleasant situation and asks him not to go. When she sees her, he puts his hand on his face and asks how she will compensate him, because his face hurts so much. So King comes up to him and tells him that she will pay all his medical expenses and says that she will do anything for him. King Han blushes and of course forgives her. The next day, King Han goes to the vegetable market, where he picks up food for the house. Suddenly, his secretary calls him and announces that they have information that some people are hunting King. After going to the market, the man immediately goes to his wife's company. Seeing King Han from afar, King wonders what her husband is doing in such a place. He approaches King and says he doesn't have a job at the moment. Consequently, the man has no money, and so he asks his wife for some money. He says he needs little, and he only asks for 500 yuan. He sees that she went out with a strange woman. The man assumes that this is probably his new bodyguard. From this, he concludes that this only means that the Lin family is aware of the impending dangers. At this point, King is thinking about something else. She puts her hand on her forehead and thinks she even helped him get a job. However, he did not believe that he left on the first day. She begins to regret telling him that she would do anything for him. She takes money out of her pocket and gives it to King Han. She says that this money is for him and asks him not to wear casual clothes when he comes to her company. So, the protagonist thanks his wife and asks if she is going home. He asks her to take him with her. However, King immediately refuses using the pretext that there is not enough room for him in the car. Then the woman who is next to them offers them a ride in her car, to which King Han is completely happy, while King, on the contrary, is outraged. On the way, the protagonist thanks the woman, asks if she is a new employee. In the company of his wife, he also asks why he didn't see her before. The woman begins to get annoyed by King Han's behavior, but she waits patiently for the end of the trip. At one point, she abruptly stops the car. The protagonist almost flies out of the passenger seat. King immediately asks her why she stops like this. Looking up, they see that there is a truck right in front of them. King says that his villa is right ahead and wonders why the road is so blocked. Then the bodyguard informs King that something is wrong here. She takes off her seatbelt to get out of the car. She tells King to sit in the car and not get out. The woman gets out of the car, after which a crowd of men also get out of the truck. They look like typical thugs. One of them, seeing a woman, tells her to move away. He exclaims that they need a girl who is sitting in his car. All the thieves have knives with them. The bodyguard responds to the bandit, who will not allow King to be robbed so brazenly. Then one of them, wielding a knife, goes straight to the bodyguard and exclaims that he does not blame her for the rudeness. However, his knife maneuver does not work on her and she dodges the blow. She takes his hand and immediately throws him in front of the car, right in the part where King is. The girl is sitting there watching this. She covers her face with her hand, and he turns around to talk to the protagonist and ask him to call the police. However, when she turns her head, she sees that her husband is not there. She immediately wonders where her husband could be going at such a dangerous and crucial time. It turns out that King Han sneaked away from the noise and entered his family's village. After opening the door, he enters the hall and realizes that there is someone inside just waiting to take them by surprise. Soon the King Han asks about what is the point of entering here after all the noise he made outside. He commands a person to show his true face. Then a man dressed entirely in black descends from the stairs of the second floor. He also wears a black hat. As he descends, he says that Ching Han has noticed his presence. He says that the Prota has at least some surveillance skills. Completely angry, King Han asks the man about how he dared to make such a mess. He also says that the man ruined the clean floor which he just washed, as he snuck into the village. Then the man replies that this is clear. King Han is really a person who takes care of his family. According to him, even at the moment when he is about to go from the base, he takes care of something as small as cleaning the floor. He says this while lighting a cigarette along the way. King Han immediately orders the man to put out his cigarette, as his wife can't stand his smoke. Then the mysterious man asks the Prota about what will happen if he doesn't. The protagonist menacingly replies to him that in this case he will end up with him in his own hands. At this moment, the man also gets angry and is the first to raise his fist in King Han. With the words, the protagonist then says that this attack speed is too slow to overwhelm him. King Han immediately grabs the man's hand and breaks both hands. The man immediately falls to his knees in a dumbfounded state. At this moment, the protagonist sees a tattoo on his neck. From this, he draws some conclusions and asks the mysterious man if he is one of the 30 members of the Dark Knight. There is no answer. Then King Han asks about who hired him. This time, the man replies that once King Han knows about the Dark Knight, it should be clear that even if he loses his life, they will never reveal the identity of the employer who decided to go for extreme measures. He takes a gold ring from his pocket and hands it to the man. He asks if he knows what kind of ring it is. Then the man recognizes this ring and says that it is holy. He immediately recognizes the great Lin King Han. The Prota asks the same question again. Then he orders that if the man does not tell him who his boss is, he will wipe out all his 12 brothers and sisters. Deciding not to hesitate with the answer, the man replies that his boss's last name is Sui. He also says that the young man is Shu. Immediately after his answer, the man is beaten on the head. The protagonist ends the man's life. Meanwhile, having dealt with all the bandits, King and his bodyguard finally arrived at the village. Both enter the hall in fear, where the Prota is cleaning. After this same situation, King Kin welcomes them with joy. He approaches his wife and offers services. The man says he will help her calm down. King sits in the chair. She puts her hand on her forehead and thinks she used to believe that her husband had changed. However, she definitely thinks she didn't expect that he would just run away so cowardly. When his life was in such danger, she sighs strongly. Then the protagonist comes to her. With a basin full of water and with a serene smile on his face, he says that his wife has worked hard and asks her to help her wash her feet. The wicked wife asks him what the hell he's doing. Then Chinkin gradually begins to take off his slippers. Then he puts her feet in the basin. The fact is that there are still hidden traces of poison in King's body that need to be treated with the 6 messages. With his help, she is finally recovering. However, the protagonist decides that he still needs to get the same massage on a regular basis. He takes his wife's feet and puts them in a basin. Then the girl with shame asks him not to touch her feet and proclaims that he is not decent. The protagonist says that he is no stranger, he is present, and his wife misunderstood him. He warns that he is a decent man and that he will not do anything with her. He grabs the girl's leg again and says that she just got a shock when she was attacked. He says the massage will help her cope with the stress she has received from being held by her legs. The girl involuntarily begins to blush more and more. King waits for the end of his relaxing massage. During the process, she remembers that in the last few days she has been sleeping well, and in addition, getting a good night's sleep. She assumes that this is possible thanks to the promise that Chin Kan made her. She is even more red, admiring how her husband massages and cleans her legs. After a few minutes, she tells him that she feels better now. The girl suggests that he pour the water into the basin. The girl also tells him that her old friend, soon it will come to your home. She offers her husband to take a walk on the street, implying that she wants to relax with her friend from her company. The protagonist doesn't seem jealous or sad at all. He just gets up and grabs a basin to pour the water, still with the same serene smile. He asks her which friend she is talking about. Only then does King come to reality and begin to get angry again. She replies to the Prota that it is not her concern. This time, she announces briefly and ominously that he must leave and not return until the end of the year. Noon, nothing upset. He jokes by asking her what will happen if he misses it before her time. Thus, he further irritates his wife. She throws a pillow next to him and tells him to get lost. It doesn't annoy the guy as much as it does. He perceives everything as fun, and not at all annoyed, he will pour water out of the basin. Of course, the protagonist follows his wife's request and leaves, goes to King's charitable community. Seeing such a familiar building, memories of years gone by come to your mind. Many years ago, the protagonist and his mother were homeless, but thanks to the help of a certain girl named Dean, they were able to survive in such difficult circumstances. He comes to the conclusion that King wants to have fun with his friends. Then he can go visit the same orphan children he once was. After buying a couple of toys, he goes straight to the shelter. As soon as the man appears on the horizon of the passage, a crowd of children runs to him, which of course, he is incredibly happy. He urges children to take their time as he ensures that they have enough toys for everyone. The children take some toys from their hands and continue playing. After seeing this scene, Ching Han retrieves memories from his childhood, still looking at them with his serene smile. He remembers when he was little, he was always happy that someone brought him new toys or gifts to the shelter. When the man was looking at the boys, a little girl runs up to him and pulls his t-shirt with a sweet expression on her face. She asks if he can play with her a little. The girl's name is Yin Yin. She is also an orphan. The prota, of course, agrees to play with her and takes her in his arms. He's playing with her like she's flying. Yin Yin is absolutely delighted to play with Qinghan. During the game, rich people in black Mercedes and solid clothes appear right in front of the shelter. From the looks of it, it's clear that the woman in the middle is probably the boss, and there are 2 bodyguards next to her. After getting out of the cars, they get out and go straight inside the shelter. Seeing the people, the cheerful baby suddenly gets serious. Pointing the finger at them, she proclaims that they are bad people. She also says that these are the bad people who want to destroy the House of Unions. Looking to the side, the protagonist is perplexed by what the little girl just said. He lowers Yin Yin to the ground and begins to look at them with interest. Qinghan asks the little girl if they really want to demolish the shelter, and then the girl says yes, and then leaves him behind. The protagonist immediately turns to the owners of the shelter. He calls a certain girl named King and immediately asks if the shelter is in order. Immediately realizing the whole situation, she asks Qinghan not to worry about it. She announces that she will try to talk to them again. Next to her is her old acquaintance named Qinryu Ding, who informs the prota that this group of people is from some resort company, and that the whole local district was bought by them. He also reports that the authorities asked them to build a new charity house before starting construction. The elderly Dinkley, with tears in her eyes, proclaims that nevertheless the company is doing unfair business, and that she has built a house next to a chemical factory. She asks the protagonist about how she can get these poor orphans there. She also asks if he remembers his stories about a certain good person who will fund a charity house for free. Qinghan replies to her that he has always been interested in what kind of person this can be. Then the old lady Dinkley replies that this person is Lady Kenru. She reports that, in the last 5 years, she has helped the charity shelter a lot. She proclaims that, specifically in this case, she is helpless. Despite this, Kinryu will deal with them by all means. Then the protagonist jumps out of his seat and proclaims that he will deal with it himself. The elderly lady says that this is a useless option. However, the protagonist convinces her that he should at least try. Meanwhile, the girl begins to deal with these people. The bodyguards say that the lives of the orphans of this orphanage are not important to their acquaintances. He asks them to blame themselves for those who were born. The woman yells at them and tells them that they are complete idiots. She asks how they dare say such terrible things about these poor children. He proclaims that sooner or later she will be punished. Then they reply that they will prepare official documents in a few days, and that during this time the House of Charity will be definitively demolished. However, at this moment, the protagonist's answer arrives. He is not thinking of demolishing the house with a stick in his hands. It goes straight to them. She says that if they don't leave now, he will beat them himself. They start hiding one behind the other and get scared of the dick. One by one, the rich start running to the car and get into it. Along the way, they shout that sooner or later their shelter will be demolished to hell. Qinghan lowers his battle staff and approaches the girl. He asks if she is okay. The stunned girl looks at Qinghan with bulging eyes.